and you can go.
Perfect. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our session today together with the Southern California chapter and the Denver chapter. Today, we are here to talk about the new productivity features for document understanding. You must have seen the UiPath's 2023.4 release for document understanding. So a lot of incredible performance enhancing objects have been released. So we are here to talk about it today. So before we go into that, a little introduction on the Denver chapter. If you haven't joined in yet, you can join the Denver chapter on the UiPath community. We are a virtual community where we host virtual events to enhance your automation journey. So if you are an RPA newbie or you are a seasoned veteran in RPA, you can always join our community to talk about the upcoming technologies and the new adaptations at UiPath and in the document understanding and RPA space. So our organizers today are Diana Gray. She is the community manager for UiPath Americas. Diana, can I hand over to you to give a quick introduction about yourself? Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
Thanks, Sharon. I'm the community marketing manager for UiPath for the Americas, which includes Canada, Latin America, and the USA. And we have about 23 chapters worldwide. So thank you for joining today. The other information I'll pass along today is we do have events on a continual basis in the Americas. So you can always find out that information at community.uipath.com, and I'll put that in the chat. We are recording this session, and that session will be available tomorrow. So I'll put that information in the chat as well. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for coming here once again. I appreciate it on behalf of the Denver and Southern California community. So to give you a quick intro about who's leading the Denver chapter, we have Saideep Kandibanda, who couldn't be here today, but he's the RPA manager at Dish. I'll give you an introduction about myself. I'm Sharon Palwandram. I'm a senior machine learning consultant at Ashling Partners. I'm also the UiPath's AI Ambassador to America's MVP. And we also have Rashmi Parikh, who's a senior RPA developer at Dish. So along our conversation, I'll add our LinkedIn profile. So if you have anything that you have questions, comments, concerns, you can always reach out to us and we'll be happy to facilitate you with it. So next up, we have our key speaker today, Russell Alfeche. Thank you, Russell, for agreeing to join our community event today. I appreciate your time, and I know you're a very busy person, so thank you for your time to come here and share your knowledge and your industrial expertise on document understanding. A little note about Russell is he is a technology leader for RPA at Cubotica. He's also the UiPath's AI ambassador to Americas, and he is also a UiPath seasoned MVP. So Russell, I'll hand over the floor to you to give a quick introduction about yourself.
Sure, thanks, Sharon. Absolutely, thanks for that awesome introduction. And yes, I'm currently at Cubotica leading their technical capability for RPA, who's also a platinum partner for UiPath. Although I am an ex-UiPather myself from Asia Pacific, and previously I was conducting the sessions around DU AI Center trainings for our customers and partners in Asia Pacific. So yeah, and I'm excited for a session today since it's also related to DU and new features in 2023.
Awesome. Thank you, Russell. So let's get ahead with our introduction and the meeting agenda today. I'll give you a quick overview of what you can expect. So we are going to do an introduction to document understanding. Then we're going to talk about the productivity features, what you've all been waiting for and what's in 2023.4 release. Russell will then give a demo on it, and we'll be accepting Q&As at the end of our session. So during this session, if you have any questions, feel free to add it in the chat box. So once we are done with the presentation, we can take your questions and answer them. So thank you all once again for joining. So let's get started. So to start with document understanding, so UiPath's product offering on document understanding is its intelligent data processing service. So I'm assuming that you have at some point you have used DU, or if you're a newbie, document understanding is the product offering that enhances the document extraction capability that amalgamates machine learning and AI technology that can extract information out of your documentation. So what kind of documents can we extract through them? So from a documentation perspective, we can think about structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. So what are these document types? So from a technical standpoint, if we think about structured documents, those are documents that always have an aligned and structured data structure. So for example, if you see a passport, a license, timesheets, they will always have a standardized structural format. So something that has a structured format is considered as a structured document. So what are semi-structured documents? So semi-structured documents are documents that flow between the structured and unstructured scenarios. If you think about invoices, receipts, bills, utility bills, they could come in a structure, but are they always the same structure? Not quite. They could vary depending on the company. They could vary depending on, the formats of it, languages, different scenarios. So those could be considered as semi-structured documents. And when we go into unstructured documents, those would define into the cadence of documents that have no structure at all, like documentation, legal contracts that could vary in pages and in formats. And we could call them as free-forming documents, such as drug prescriptions, scripts. So those would identify as unstructured documents. So all of these scenarios can be handled by UiPath's document understanding service. So here's a quick high-level overview on how document understanding works. So this is a process flow on how DU works, essentially. So we have our documentation, like we previously talked about. We have either structured, semi-structured, unstructured documents. And what's the output of this? We probably need to extract information. We need to extract fields. For example, if we talk about a semi-structured document like invoices, we probably need to get vendor names, PO names, totals, invoice dates, total dues, fields like that. So keeping that in mind, keeping our output in mind, we could feed our documents into our document understanding process. So what does document understanding do? It defines the taxonomy, first of all. That will be the first step, identifying what fields you need to extract, right? So that's the definition of taxonomy. You can add fields, you can add values, numbers, addresses. So once we identify what fields where we need to extract, we can submit the document to digitize. So the digitization space, what it does is it uses the OCR technology to digitize your document and make it into a machine readable format. Once that's done, you could classify your document. So say you have invoices in your automation flow, but you also have non-invoices. So the classify scope would help identify what's an invoice and what's not an invoice. So once you do that justification, you can go into extraction methodologies where you can use machine learning extraction to extract whatever fields that you have defined in your taxonomy. So once you have extracted, you need to validate if this is the right extraction and if it aligns with your business validation and business rules. So once that validation is done, you can export it into your RPA system, BPM, or any other API solution or any other system. So one of the things here is, if you see on number 5, is train and validate. Say you have a machine learning model that needs to be trained over time, and say your documents change over time as well. You have multiple vendors that have multiple invoices, but the vendors can change. So your machine learning model can change over time. So UiPath offers a train scope where you can train your ML model over time, and you can enhance your machine learning capabilities through that train extraction loop. So essentially, this is a high level of how document understanding works. Next up, I'll hand over the floor to Russell to talk about taxonomy and the next features that are available at UiPath. Russell, do you want to take over the slide deck, or do you want me to present it for you?
Sure, I can start presenting on my end. So
Okay, sure. Let me stop sharing in that case.
sure. And yeah, thanks for providing that really good overview of how DE works. Maybe for others it will be a refresher, but for those who have not any idea with DU yet, so this is a good overview. And I'd like to breeze through a couple of additional slides to reinforce those visually, the one that Sharon has discussed. So let me just simply share my screen. Hope you can see my screen right now. Can anyone see my screen?
Yes, Russell,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, this one. So yeah, as mentioned, I'll just breeze through this so that we have time with the demos and also a Q&A at the end. So this just to reinforce what Sharon has discussed. What are the different steps involved in the DU? She mentioned the taxonomy, digitize, classify, and this is how it actually looks like when doing it in UiPath Studio. So taxonomy, setting the stage, what are the fields that you need, what are the different document types that you need. For digitize, it's just converting from raw text, from an image to a raw text, so that it's machine readable, as Sharon mentioned. Not exactly pinpointing the extracting certain data points yet. This is just setting up the document to be readable throughout the framework, right? And in fact, for some documents that are native PDF, OCR doesn't even need to be used, right? OCR are just used to convert an image into character. So that's why it's called optical character recognition. But for native PDF or like Word documents, it's just like copy pasting whatever is in that and then using it in the framework. So that's digitize. And then classify, Sharon mentioned around being able to classify from different types of document, whether it comes as different files or if it comes as one file, there are classifiers that could be able to split that particular file into multiple document types, just like what you saw in the animation. So they have different types of classifiers that you can use. And then, of course, there's some level of uncertainty or probability. So that's why it comes with confidence score that you can use in the workflow in order to determine whether it should be pushed for human validation or just straight through. 100% confidence this is an invoice, push it through. 100% confidence this is a financial report, push it through. But at certain points where you have very bad quality of document and the extractor or the classifier is not that confident enough, in terms of how it classified the document. So there is this validate classification so that the human can review how the bot classify, and you can split it further into multiple document type if needed. And then after validation, of course, whether it's just one document type or multiple document type, it will go to its proper extractor. Let's say the document is classified as an invoice. Invoice will go to the invoice extractor. If you have ML, it will go to the ML invoice extractor. If you have form extractor or regex extractor for invoice, it will go to the corresponding extractor that you set, which you can do as hybrid here. If you can see here, the checkboxes across different extractor exist for the date field for invoices. This is what we call hybrid extraction, right? The extractors from left to right is the one that executes. So the ones on the far right will be fallback in case the extractor on the left, which is regex based, does not return a result or has very low confidence based on the minimum confidence that you set. So this is to make your extraction more reliable. So you're just not just relying on the machine learning, but also if you have a pattern that you can use for certain fields, then you can basically create rules. So that means you can extract using rules-based extractor instead of model-based extractor, which I can cover in the next slides. So this is what I'm referring to as versus rules-based versus form-based. It doesn't mean that if you have semi-structured or unstructured document, it doesn't mean that you should always use you should always use model-based. For my example, like invoice, let's say you're processing an invoice that has an invoice number that contains only alphanumeric. Alphanumeric. First three characters would be alphabet, and the last three letters would be the last few characters would be numbers. So that alone, that is a pattern. So you can create rules, and then you can create a regex based extractor for the invoice number, and then you can combine with the remaining fields. You can combine it with the AI based or model based extractor, which you don't have to create rules for. We either have pre-trained models for common document like invoice, purchase order, receipts, financial statements, and other forms. So this is the most efficient way if you have a pre-trained model, right? You don't have to create templates. Even for forms as well, we have pre-trained models, as I mentioned, W9 forms and all that. So, and this is much more scalable, so it really doesn't rely on the amount of formats that you have. So that's why it's more suitable for semi-structured or unstructured document, the model-based approach. But again, for structured or fixed format, if you don't have any pre-trained forms AI or model, or if you don't want to use forms AI, you can create your own template using form extractor or create regex pattern using regex based extractor, right? But there's no predefinite rule. You need to really assess what type of documents that you have, what are the fields, what is the amount of variation in terms of format. If it's more than 15 variation or 20 variation, then you might want to go for model-based approach or AI-based. It's either using pre-trained model or train a model from scratch. So that itself, being able to build a high-performing model is a really broad topic. So we will not cover that right now. So, and UiPath did a good job in documenting that as well, how you can train a high-performing model for document understanding, right? And I alluded to for a hybrid approach earlier, combination of rule-based and AI-based approach, which you can perform at a field level, not only at the document level. Yeah, so this is our pre-trained model I mentioned, and I just available in AI Center for invoices, receipts, purchase order, and then for Forms AI, again, structured fixed format document. You don't have to. You can create your template yourself, or if you want a more easier route, we also have UiPath also has Forms AI, where you just need to provide 2 to 5 samples of those structured forms, and it will automatically create the taxonomy, the list of fields that you may need for those form, and then give you a machine learning model for that form. So yeah, if you go for machine learning model or model-based or AI-based approach, and you cannot see any pre-trained model available, right? So you can definitely train your own model from scratch. Let's say you have a document for your P&L statement, but I think that also relates to financial statement, which have pre-trained model. Let's say it's a completely new document that is not being associated to financial statement. The fields that are being output from financial statement is different from what you would need for the P&L statement. So you may want to create a machine learning model for document understanding from scratch, so you can and train your own model based on the guidelines on how to gather sufficient and quality data set to train a machine learning model. So after extraction, of course, there's also a way to validate. So similar to how you can validate classification. So it's just a different view, let's say, because in classification, your view is just classifying per page what are these document types. But for the validation of extraction, it lets you classify if the fields extracted are accurate and if it's pointing to the proper field based on the output of your extractors. And then eventually, if you use a machine learning based extractor, then you could be able to train it, retrain it, gather the data using the train extraction scope and push it into your AI Center dataset, or have it pushed locally so you can upload it to AI Center and then rerun your training pipeline, or you can configure it to have a active feedback loop, right? That are scheduled on, let's say, a weekly basis at the shortest, because the way machine learning model works is it really relies heavily on the amount of data, right? You have to set the expectation for the business that when it comes to active learning or machine learning, right? It's not, it can't be as real time as compared to other less lightweight models like text-based models or other types of models. But for document understanding models, right, you should have gathered at least a few hundred or 50 plus more samples or data to do the retraining properly. Otherwise, if you configure your active retraining pipeline in a center, let's say daily, or it can't be even for a new action center task you push to data labeling, and then it's not the expectation shouldn't be like it will automatically learn what you have validated from the extraction. It should be a weekly, at least a weekly cadence, so that you would have gathered a sufficient amount of data to retrain the model and run a training pipeline from the week-long data set gathered from the validation from the users, right? So that's how a training retraining process should be, or at least a month as well, so you have sufficient amount of validated data from the users to feed into the pipeline. So after the digitization, classification, extraction, the next or the last final step, at least in terms of DU, would be the downstream process. What do you want to do with the data that you extracted? Because document understanding by itself is not the end-to-end process. There will be an upstream process where you ingest the data, where the document comes from. It can be email, it can be SharePoint, folders, etc. But document understanding is a critical piece that sits in the middle for you to understand or to extract the necessary data points from this document and be able to make decisions in the downstream and perform the actions that you need to do, let's say to enter it into your SAP, to send it as a report, or to enter it in a website or something. So there will always be a downstream process involved in the end-to-end process that is where document understanding is a key part of, right? Great. So now that we have that idea what document understanding is, what are the new features that are released as part of 2023 for document understanding? So of course, in line with the AI advancements that we have, with the current AI advancements, so UiPath is not getting left behind in improving the AI and ML model behind this DU models, right? So they added a few more pre-trained and retainable ML models for DU, like for payslips, certificates of origin, EU declarations, all the CMS 1500 for healthcare, claims, shipping invoices. So they added, and in the future they'll be adding more and more. So in the not so common side of the spectrum of document processing, because they already have the common document pre-trained models. So now they're adding more and more based on customer interactions, right? And also, probably I'm going to show you later regarding classification, how you can create a machine learning classifier quickly with just one click once you have gathered the data or samples. Because previously, the main classifier that you have available would be the intelligent keyword classifier, which is not really ML based. To some extent, it uses machine learning to generate a bag of words, and based on those keywords, it will try to classify based on probability what this document types is just by looking at the keywords. But sometimes those keywords aren't as reliable because sometimes depending on how the document is digitized, it may have some characters, erroneous characters included. So they introduced in the last few months ML classifier as well. And comes with that is you have to train the machine learning model classifier yourself in a center. But now they introduced one-click classification so that if you already have your data set in a center, you can just automatically create a machine learning model, let it run, and you have your ML classifier. So, yeah, this is what I'm going to show as well in the demo later regarding business rules. And this was one of the most exciting features that they just released, because now you can now separate the logic piece on for each of the document types and field between with the workflow DU framework, other pieces in the DU framework, right? So instead of defining these business rules for, let's say, total, for total, I have business rules that it should always equal to the extracted net total plus plus tax or VAT, right? So previously, you defined this logic in the workflow itself, but what would make more sense is defining it and consolidating it in the taxonomy manager where you have all the list of fields, right? And the document types that you have. So that's why this one feature is really exciting for me. So you don't have to mess around with the workflow and implementing the logic there. So in terms of the roadmap, in the advent of the large language models that we have, right, which is really capable towards addressing challenges around extracting from a structured document because of how powerful this models is to get context or understanding about a chunk of text, right? Being able to integrate with this technology expands the intelligence around unstructured document and leveraging like GPT 3.5 and GPT 3 to query unstructured document, ask about certain things about the document, and it will answer based on the contents of the document. Right? So this is really exciting that we can see in the future releases. And of course, AI-assisted adaptive learning. I think this is more communications mining for document clustering. General availability for API. I think this refers to document understanding as a service. So you not only you can use UiPath document understanding outside of UiPath Studio, right? Once this is released, the API base, because right now without the API availability, you cannot use the document understanding activities like digitization, extraction outside Studio. So in order for you to create a DU process, right, you have to build it using Studio and run it using Robot. But with the API, you can connect any external applications that you have, whether it's what language is built using Python or C# or Java, and then you can call these APIs to call on the DU activities. Of course, user experience, building better models faster, enhanced capability, discovery, and deployment insights and operations. So if you're familiar with UiPath Insights, there will be pre-built dashboards relating to document understanding, usage, or what document types, how many documents have you processed so far in a given timeline. So great. Now let's go to the fun part, which is the demo. But before I go to this part, any questions at this point you need to address?
I didn't see any questions so far, Russell.
Great. So now let's go to the demo first. What I'm going to show you is, although this wasn't supposed to be part of the demo, but I just thought to share this one as well because this is still in public preview. It's nice to know this feature, especially those that are starting with UiPath. This feature, Extraction Automation Builder, basically lets you build a document understanding workflow with just 3 to 5 clicks. That's it. And this is using Studio Web, which is a natural entry point for those who are starting with UiPath, doesn't have any idea of Studio. So Studio Web is a web-based studio, basically, which you have access for lots of API-based actions or activities from UiPath. So let me go through that right now. Yeah, so as I said, Extraction Automation Builder. So this is available in Document Understanding tab here in your cloud org, and then you can just click Get Started. The only thing that you need to do is think about what you want to process, what you want to extract from, right? And then you just need to upload it here. Let's say I want to automate my expense reporting, and I need help in extracting details from my receipts, right? So I click sample receipt here, click open, and then I want it to do its thing. So that's how many clicks. I click get started, I click upload, and then I click my receipt. So that's 4 click. And then done, right? So you have it automatically identify what document type you uploaded. If you uploaded an invoice, it will automatically select invoice here, right? And this right now it currently supports pre-trained models available to classify it automatically, right? And then once that's done, my 5th click would be create workflow. And then as I said, this is Studio Web. So it automatically creates all the activities for you, starting from the trigger, which is as default manual trigger, downloading the file that you uploaded from storage bucket, writing like a log message, extracting the document and letting you validate the document data and writing the extracted data. Right? So you have the automation already built, and just for you to run from here. And then it's up to you if you want to add you want to use this as part of an automated process and you want to share it with someone else. So you can add a trigger to point into a certain mailbox so that the trigger will be once an email is received. And that's it. So just changing the trigger and then say it will point you to dynamically to new files, right? Open in Action Center. Then to show the output. That's it. So you're able to build your own DU workflow with just 5 clicks using Studio Web for extracting your receipt. And once you submit this, so you can copy whatever you have here, and then that's it. So you have your own DU workflow that you created, or this Studio Web created for you from scratch. So you can update or modify as needed. You have connect to Outlook to trigger. So you can email received. And change the trigger. Switch to event trigger. Yeah. That's it. And then yeah, email received. So you can change and then supply the parameters. So great. So now let's go to the next part, the demo. So this is all good, right? You're able to what's the slide? But once you go into more complex type of automation, which involves some systems in the downstream, like a more complex way to ingest SharePoint, or maybe not SharePoint. If you're SharePoint, you can connect 365. Maybe you have a shared folder and you have to do some sort of pre-processing and all, and classification and all that. So really the way to go is via Studio and the EU framework that I walked you through earlier. So first off, let me show you the EU framework. So this is the EU framework, right? But I didn't create this all by myself from scratch because the EU framework already provides you with this different reusable framework components, just like if you're familiar with RA framework. So it has all this reusable workflow that you can just modify and add custom activity or custom validations or customize it per your need for the process. But this itself is already pre-built in the DE framework. So really, all you just need to do is, let's say, in the digitize where you have the digitize step, let's say you don't want to use UiPath document OCR because your samples are mostly handwritten, right? And based on my experience, the one that really performs OCR that performs best when it comes to handwritten would be Google Cloud OCR. So you just need to change the OCR engine here, right? And point to Google Cloud Vision or maybe Microsoft Vision. So yeah, just need to update that. And going to the other steps, classify. If you want to update the classifier, you're using ML classifier or you're using intelligent keyword classifier, you can do this as well. You can update this. And when it comes to the extractor, depending on the types of document that you're receiving, you just need to update this. So in this case, this particular demo, we're only using invoice. We're only having invoice. So I'm just mapping this taxonomy into the invoice output. And yeah, so the framework is already built, even the exception handling. So we just need to customize it for your document. And most importantly, it also has pre-built taxonomy, right? So taxonomy is, as I said, setting up the scene, metadata, the document types that you have, right? In this, so these are the pre-built taxonomy here, which I'm 99% sure for projects that you have, you won't be able to use all of these document types in one project or process, right? But certainly at least one of this, let's say you have an invoice processing, you will be able to use and start from the pre-built taxonomy that they have for invoice, right? And this is a good starting point that we have for the taxonomy and the business rules, field business rules validation, right? So in the previous version, you won't be able to see these rules right here, right? But now, if you go to Taxonomy Manager, you have this Rules tab. What Rules tab is again, just by defining the taxonomy, it makes perfect sense that you also have the rules all consolidated in the Taxonomy Manager so that you have one place where you have the field level validation within the Taxonomy Manager. Let's say, for example, case in point for an invoice. I want to make sure that the invoice always have value. So I can create a rule that the invoice number should not be empty and it should be a must rule, meaning this should always be true. Otherwise, I will have a broken rule, right? Broken rule is the one that you will check in the workflow. If a broken rule exists, then you should push it for human validation, right? And then once it's pushed to human validation, the human won't be able to submit the validation, just like what you saw in the receipt earlier. the human won't be able to submit that action center task until and unless the invoice number is specified or highlighted there, right? So that is must. I mean, if you set the critical level as must, right? But if you set the criticality level as should, it will be flagged as a broken rule, right? And then you can create a condition in the workflow. If there's a broken rule, again, push it to Action Center. But once it goes to Action Center, it will flag as a broken rule, but you can submit it even though you don't satisfy this broken rule, right? And hope that makes sense. And for different field type, you can implement different rules. So this drop down may vary for a number, for a text. I think this one is a text. So these are the available rules, right? So I'm also checking if the invoice number should always be 10 digits. So for the amount, I have a regex. So the amount should have the dollar sign and digit. Digit format. So yeah, so these are the rules I defined and how I validate that within the workflow. There's also a placeholder here or a workflow, the usable workflow here in the extraction rules check that in the invoice post. So depending on document type, I have different post processing. So these are pre-built again. So I just added a few lines here to check the broken rules from business rules result. And this is just to check whatever broken rules is, and then so that it will flag that auto extraction success is false, meaning there are broken rules, push it to Action Center. So I can comment out the this reusable template has the check previously for mandatory fields, which is existing in a config file. But since I have the rules in the taxonomy manager already, I can already check it here, even the mandatory fields using the broken rules, right? So let me just run this quickly using a sample document and using the attended mode. So there are two main workflows here. One is main action center, which is for unattended with human in the loop, meaning can be run by unattended robot. Unattended robot just continuously process the documents in the queue, and then whatever needs to be validated by human, we push to Action Center, and then the robot will be available again to get another transaction from the queue. So this is for unattended continuous run with human in the loop, of course. For main unattended, so this is for those that is using UiPath Assistant, triggering from UiPath Assistant, and the validation will take place per transaction, and it will block the current transaction unless you finish the validation. So let's do it from here. I'll run this bug. We'll be able to see. So now so now it's checking. Yeah. So since I don't have an argument for the file to process, it's asking me if attended. It's specifying the file. Open. Then just initializing the assets, the API key. So these are like errors that can be skipped because you can define these assets within the config file. If it's not in the config, if it's not in the asset, it should be in the config file. So it just do a try catch there, but this is not. So that's digitizing the document, then classifying, and then extracting. So it's quite fast. Now done extraction, and then doing the invoice process, the extraction rules check I showed earlier. Continue. Validating any broken rules, getting the fields that extracted. Part of the whole workflow, checking validation rules. And then this one checks the confidence score. And then let's continue here. Probably also these are already part of the DU framework. But have to build, you can customize it. Okay, auto success extraction successful. So meaning it will do the extraction validation, which is the validation station for extraction, which will show up in a second. Go here. So presenting validation station. So yeah, so this is how it looks like. So the reason why it pushed to validation is because it has violated some of the rules I defined. So first one is invoice number, invalid business rules. Invoice number should always be 10 digits. If you remember, this is the one that I put in the business the taxonomy manager for the invoice number rules, right? So if you have this must validation, I mean rule violated rules, then if you can see, you cannot submit, right? If I add, for example, the invoice number is, let's say it's really 10 digits. 2, 4, 6, 1, 2, 3. Now that is valid field already, right? So I was able to satisfy that rule, and I was able to submit is enabled already, and then I just have to worry about these two fields, which I defined as it should not be empty, right? But for maybe for some document it might be empty. It's just valid. It's just to flag whether these custom fields are really there or not. But it won't keep me from submitting, right? Since there's really no property number or proper address, I can already submit this. Right. So, okay, great. Yeah, and it will do the training, retraining. Since we're using invoice model, it's a machine learning model, it will push the validation that I did into AI center data labeling, and I can use that as a training set for the retraining pipeline. Great. I'm very aware of that time, so so I'll just continue on with the last part, which is one-click classification as promised. I want to show you as well the one-click classification feature in document understanding. You go to document understanding, So let's say you have already gathered all your different types of documents that you have. So let's say you have invoices in your purchase order, and these are the number of pages. Ideally, in order to really have a good output from the machine learning classifier, ideally this data set should be balanced, right? When you upload data in this data labeling for purchase order, could be at least at or equal to or around um, the other document type, the number of pages for the other document type, right? So this is not a good example at all. But just to for the sake of example, so once if you have these two different document types, at least you should have two document types to create a machine learning classifier. You just need to go to classifiers, create an automated training, and then name your classifier, in this case, finance documents, for example. And then the document types that you want to choose, invoice, purchase order, and the model will be document classifier, and then go ahead and train. And then once it's done, you would be able to use it in your classification, just like how I did here. So machine learning classifier, I just called the output from the trained model. So basically, if I feed the purchase order here, it will classify as a purchase order, and it will route to the purchase order extractor. So that's a simple explanation. So great. Yeah, I think I'm done with the demo, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And I see one question. Thanks, Alan. How did you split into two sections, the action center fields validate? It's built in. So basically, it identifies what are the broken rules, um, and also the confidence level, right? And basically, it splits into two categories. One, fields that you need to validate, and fields that are already validated. I don't think it's yeah, it's not here. Yeah, because this might be using the GA version of the intelligent OCR, but I think for here at least, yeah, like this one, yeah, like this one. So you can also filter out split based on the confidence score for the extraction. So those that are, let's say, 44% and below, 44% and up will go here, and below will go here. Not this 91, but field level, I think. Yeah, but yeah, so this is the same categorization, fields to validate and valid fields. If you have broken rules, then it will go to fields to validate. If you have confidence filter or sorting, it will go here.
Yeah, and there's a second question. Is there a broken rule to compare the extracted value against a variable?
That should be in the workflow. Thanks for that question. So that should, you can, so once you get that broken rule from the workflow, you can you can reference that field. And if you have a variable in the workflow that you want to compare it with, then it will be in the workflow. The only thing that you can define in the taxonomy manager would be based on the field type. So let's say receipt, I have the total amount, which is also text. We get something that's not text, yeah, number, right? So you have, yeah. So for numbers, these are the only different rules. But if it's text, for example, you have different other sorts of rules you can implement.
Great.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, Russell and Sharon, I just want to thank you. We're actually out of time right now. So if anybody has any additional questions, if you can please capture the addresses in chat for Russell and Sharon and feel free to reach out to them. And I just want to thank everybody for participating today. I appreciate you guys coming to these sessions, and in the chat is also information on where you can find additional events that we run in the community.uipath.com URL. So
Yep, thank you,
all.
everybody. Thank you, Diana. Thank you all
Uh-huh.
for joining. Thank you, Russell, for your expertise on the new product offerings. So thank you, everybody, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.